Awakening in later life can be a very disorientating process because it's something that's happened to you almost unexpectedly, not something maybe that you've been looking for all of your life. And maybe a short time ago, you probably felt like you had everything worked out, or at least there was a plan and a direction in your life. You knew what you were heading towards, you knew why you were doing things, and you kind of had a sense of what the meaning of life was, or at least what the meaning of your life was. But an awakening can basically grab all that and throw it into the air, and kind of destroy it, or at least move a lot of those pieces around. So it can reshape and redefine how you look at life. Because before an awakening and before you've had that shift, you feel like you can influence life in some way. You feel like it's your journey and your story. You feel like the hero in your story. And like me, maybe you've tried over the years many things to become a better hero and achieve that final chapter of glory in your hero's journey of generating wealth or building a legacy, building a family, or achieving something, or getting something of some kind. But what ends up happening for many people is that either just fails completely, or even if you attain those things, it's seen very quickly that it's not enough. Like, it doesn't actually do everything that they said it would do. So even if you play by the so-called rules of the story, life seems not to play fair, and you're left with a sense of disappointment, disillusionment, and kind of disgust almost. Now, this can lead to this awakening shift where you start to question life itself. And for the sort of beginning, maybe first or second third of your life, you may have spent time trying to work out what the rules of life were. If I do this, I'll get that. How does this work? If I move in this way, does it get this kind of outcome? But an awakening and a shift is a whole new perspective. And rather than looking outward at the world, and it then changes because you realize actually the world cannot give you the answers. The universe is not there to provide for you, and no physical sensation or experience or object of any kind can give you the lasting peace and happiness that you yearn for. So this awakening shift can happen, which switches that around and turns the focus of your awareness from the world and the external and the material and the physical over to the internal, to inquiry, to the nature of yourself and the nature of spirituality. So this is where inquiry begins. Now, achieving this and kind of going through this in later life is confusing and is disorientating because you're not quite sure where it's going to go. You feel a little bit of a loss, like you're losing your identity, and you feel torn because on one hand you are yearning the truth, you're yearning a deeper understanding of reality itself and what or who you really are. But on the other hand, you kind of fear letting go of everything that you've worked so hard, or seemingly worked so hard, to achieve over the years. And it feels like maybe you've seen through that illusion, but the mind, the separate self that's still clinging on to its existence, is reluctant to let go of that world. It's reluctant to let go of the experiences, of the memories, of the things that it's worked so hard to attain. So you can be torn backwards and forwards, yearning to go forwards towards a deeper truth, something that will give you that lasting peace, but being pulled back into the physical experiential world because of the mind and the ego. Now, this is natural, and there will never reach a time where the mind doesn't play its games. The mind always comes up with thoughts such as, oh, you're pretending. You only know this mentally. It's not established within you permanently, so it can't be true. You haven't achieved this yet. You're a long way off. You haven't seen what they've seen. Your awakening journey is not the same. You're trying to pretend. These are the voices of the mind. But the mind is not you. If you've seen and you've realized, then you know. And you can't unknow that. So don't let the mind take away what you already know. And with awakening, it's not new things. This is not a new experience or a new piece of knowledge. It's not something that you have to go and read a book or go to a retreat to find out. You've already and always known this, that you are more than this separate self, that you are more than the body, more than the mind, and more than the collection of all these thoughts, that you are eternal, that you are greater than all of this, that all that there is you. And you're not in it, you are it. And you've always known this. So it's not something you have to get. It's not something you have to work hard to try and attain. You don't have to keep reminding yourself of it. You don't have to think of it constantly. You don't have to abide in it. You don't have to physically feel it or experience it to be situated in it. It's just known. Just like once you know what an elephant is, you always know what an elephant is. You don't need to think about that 24/7. You don't need to be physically sensing the knowledge of an elephant 24/7. You don't need to be touching an elephant 24/7 or riding on top of an elephant 24/7. You know what this is, and once you've known it, you can't unknow it. You can't forget what an elephant is. And it's the same as reality. Once you've seen it, once you've tasted it, once you've known it, and really it's just a remembering, it's yours. And it's always accessible. Now, this doesn't mean that the mind won't come back, that the mind won't play its games and tricks, its pinball game act of bouncing thoughts around and pretending that you're not awake and pretending that you've not seen this. Of course it will do all that. And it will still make judgments, and it will still undermine you, and it will still categorize things and try to convince you that you're separate. But you're observing all of this. You're the awareness in which all of this occurs. Because if you were the mind, or if the mind was you, the mind would know. The mind wouldn't question it. Oh, is it this? Am I this? Who am I? What am I? If you were the mind wouldn't question it. It would know itself. But what you truly are, awareness, is already aware of itself. It can't not be aware of itself. Like the ocean, it doesn't need to get wet to know that it's ocean. The ocean doesn't need to fill itself with ocean to know that it's ocean. It always is and always has been ocean, and it always has known that. And always will know that. Whether it's full of seaweed, which we say are the thoughts, for example, whether the seaweed comes and goes, or whether the sharks, the negative thoughts come and go, it's all just ocean and always has been. So as you kind of enter this awakening stage in later life, it can leave you feeling that you've completely changed the roadmap, that you've ripped up all the signposts, that you've changed, everything's changed around you. You don't recognize this new landscape. And it can feel worrying. It can feel dark and lonely at times. And people may recognize this in you. They may recognize it in you. They may feel that you've become disconnected, that you've changed in some way. Really, the only thing that's changed is just the perspective in which you view and move in the world. And it does deepen, it does change over time. It comes, so to speak, in waves. sometimes deeper and more powerful than others. Sometimes it seems to wane, almost like you've lost it. But again, you can't lose what you know. It's always there in the background. But sometimes it seems more brighter than other times. So the only thing that you can do is absolutely nothing to either accelerate this or become more established in it. There's no practice that you can do, because you are already this and have always been, even when you didn't realize it. So there's no cause and effect. It just is what it is. There is all that there is, and it's just doing its mysterious, wonderful thing, all out of love, but for no apparent reason. And any questions that arise about why this has happened, can I do anything to speed it up, what comes next, those are all questions of mind. The mind looking to reinforce the idea of a separate self. If there are no questions, there's no sense of a separate self. Any questions come from the mind still clinging to the idea of a separate self and wanting to reinforce and build that back up. And again, even that itself is perfectly okay and exactly as it should be. You can't question one thing in all that this is, all that there is, and not question another thing. You can't say this thought is not part of all that there is. Everything is part of all that there is. There is nothing that is not all that there is. So it is perfect as it is. And to say, oh, well, the story that I've gone through is not quite right, or the way that I'm struggling, it doesn't feel right, and I'm separate to this, I'm not fully getting it, I'm not on the right level or dimension. It's perfect. It's unfolding perfectly as it should.